The recent data shows that they spend at least more than 1 hour each day on TikTok, which is a lot of time. The studies have proved that Gen Alpha is the generation who have converged their personal identity and their virtual identity. Most of their activities, which include games, apps, shape their vision of who they really are. I think for parents, it's very important to understand that they use platform and tools to create their ideal world, which is not their real world they are living. I truly believe that create real activities in the real world help kids to better understand that the world we are really living is not bad.
We've been really exploring a lot about how screens can be a gateway to be able to help kids to move. At Kuul Play, we've kind of talked about this as hybrid play. We have the Kuul Play world, and they've actually helped co-create that. And so they have a kind of a short virtual experience, and then they come off screens doing a real world play. It feels like a video game, and then they're like, but it's not quite a video game. They're immersed in the real world. This episode is brought to you by Kuul Play, the platform that's changing the game for how kids engage with movement and sports. What would help us even more is if you choose to subscribe. Now let's dive into the episode. We're watching childhood change in real time. And a lot of parents I speak to say, I don't even recognize how my kids play anymore. And it's not just about screen time, it's about identity, belonging, and how culture is shaped today. What we used to call play is now happening on screens, in memes, through dances, fandom, and online friendships. So how do we as coaches, parents, brands respond to that? And that's what today's episode is all about. And I could not have a more perfect guest. Amelie Ebongue is a best-selling author, global marketer, and one of the most trusted voices in decoding Gen Z and Gen Alpha. He's worked from EA to Hypebeast and written the book Generation TikTok and has just been named one of LinkedIn's 50 Black women in marketing to watch. Today, we're going to talk about the digital playground, identity, and what the future of play could look like if we get it right. So let's get into it. Amelia, welcome to Kuul Conversations.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me in the show.
It's a real joy. I'd love to maybe start with, for those who may not be aware of the huge body of work that you've done, maybe you could give an insight into particularly your recent work all around Generation Alpha, Gen Z, and your book, Generation TikTok.
Yeah, so Generation TikTok. In this book, I explain the genesis of TikTok and its aspiration for the global world. Because as you may know, TikTok is the popular name and popular entertainment app for the world. So I really explain what is TikTok. I talk about the different features, how you can create your content immediately from your phone without using other tools, which at that time was literally revolutionary, because most of the time we used to think that to create content, you need to have big budget, big materials, and it's not. So it was an incredible opportunity for me to explain what's happened there.
You once called TikTok a cultural operating system, and that kind of gave me chills. Can you explain what you meant by that and why that should matter to every parent listening right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. TikTok called themselves an entertainment platform, which is different than being a social media application like Snapchat or Instagram, for example. When you scroll the content on TikTok on your newsfeed, you can easily find different content in different topic and areas. You can scroll to discover how to tailor your kitchen. You can scroll to discover how to make your own face mask, for example, homemade face mask. You can scroll to discover how to learn your lesson at school, your math lesson. So you have so many different content and in any type. So it's different in that sense because they help you to discover. And it's more than ever the right definition because it's a discovery platform in various sectors and environment, which is not framed in the same way for others application, like I mentioned before. So
I see. And do you think then that there's an opportunity for TikTok to almost like real life platforms? So that idea of it's a discovery experience on a screen, that can it lead to real world action, whether that's like play, movement, confidence, do you think?
yes, because the thing is that TikTok helps you to create content in the easy way because they make everything at your disposal on the app, which is not the same on the other ecosystem. It used to be different, but right now they try to make it more easily for users to create videos online. And as you can see, the other competitor in the market, they just own independent platform. So every social media app try to have his own ecosystem where users can create their content easily with everything at their disposal.
I see. And when we think of TikTok, the fear that parents have is my child is in this world that I either don't understand, don't know what they're doing, and also just pure screen time. How do you think about that as a parent yourself?
Yeah, sure. I think the most important part is to regulate the time screen for child because in that global agenda, gaming application, social media application as well, most of the kids, they are very close to their smartphone. So they don't really realize how many hours they spend on that. So it's our duty to regulate the time spent on this application. We can't literally blame our kids because if they are not adults, we are all responsible of them. So we need to teach them how to use it if we want them to use it. And we need to regulate the time they're going to spend on it. So mostly it's our own duty to manage the time spent on the platform by our kids.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that because even as an adult, I'm guilty of getting lost at times. And within it, it's very easy. And I know from talking to so many parents, like a lot of them will say they're afraid, they're overwhelmed, even at their kids' personalities changing and they don't feel equipped to keep up. What would you say to parents that are just concerned about their kids being on TikTok?
Well, in today's environment, the recent data shows that they spend at least more than 1 hour each day on TikTok, which is a lot of time. The responsibility is to the parents to manage it, right? Because if the parent decides to buy a phone, he is the one who is responsible to control how the kid's gonna use it. So it's very an individual scenario, parents to parents, to be honest.
Do you think there's a concern around the content that they're consuming on TikTok?
Yeah, of course, because there is so many content that are not appropriate to kids on TikTok. Even if they have a department which called privacy, who have the responsibility to restrict which content is legal or not. I mean, most of the parents need to be aware that a lot of contents are not good on TikTok. So they need to look at what happened on this platform and they need to be aware on what they want to teach to their kids. And you can also regulate with the metrics on settings which content is appropriate or not to watch.
From your deep in depth exploration of TikTok, what would you say is a core message that you would want parents to know who are feeling overwhelmed or just not feeling like up to date? What is something that is a key takeaway from your findings? What is something that's not as well known that you'd like people to know?
Honestly, don't be a stranger with social media. Don't be a stranger. Even if you are not so familiar, be a minimum interest about social media ecosystem because sometimes we talk about TikTok, but a lot of things happen also WhatsApp, even on Instagram, on Snapchat. Many things happen there and we should be proud because a lot of good contents happen there. But there is also bad aspect and effects on kids' brain. So my biggest advice is to be curious a little bit about the conversation of their kids, what your kids are talking about. Because at such a young age, especially the Gen Alpha, they are not mature enough to make the distinction between their virtual identity comparing to their real identity, right? So we need to be curious at least in what they are talking about.
Identity is something. I'd like to dive into that. You've worked across fashion, music, gaming, digital media. What have you seen that makes you believe that this generation is different in how they express identity and connection?
Yeah. Well, the Gen Alpha shape their identity with the virtual identity. So some of them, they confuse who they really are because they merge their real life with their virtual life. Studies that have proved that Gen Alpha is the generation who have converge their personal identity and their virtual identity. They can call themselves by the handle name they use online, which is not the real name they have on their ID card. So
Wow.
in that sense, it's very important to understand that most of their activities, which includes games app, I can say Roblox to name a few, a social media platform where they lie with the real age they have to subscribe, shape their vision of who they really are. So I think for parents, it's very important to understand that the shift is happening in that sense because they use platform and tools to create their ideal world, which is not their real world they are living.
I can hear parents and people being super concerned about that. Some of the concerns around we can't just say no, you can't play Roblox, you can't play gaming or social media because it's part of our world. Is there a piece in between in which we can help, with the blurring of the boundaries? Because we've never had this before.
Yeah, I mean, I truly believe that create real activities in the real world help kids to better understand that the world we are really living is not bad. So there is so many ways and opportunity to create playful environment in the real world. You don't need to be self-sufficient virtually. Like it's not because you are active virtually that your real world in the real life is not okay or it's not well sufficient. I truly believe that both works well, but you need to regulate how much you are going to spend and invest in the virtual world because the world that you are playing virtually, it's not necessarily what's going to make you being a better person in the real life. You know what I mean? Because most of the time
Yes.
they try to compare their performance on game space, ecosystem, and apps they are playing just because they want to be performance and to be the better person virtually. But that doesn't mean that in the real world you are a bad person, because there is different aspects on the player's mentality and player's psychology as well.
That's such a fascinating point that you've brought up. And it's interesting because at Cool Play, we're creating the real world experience offline and we have a virtual online. So it's almost like using the screen as a launch pad. A lot of people look at games and the gaming world and they say, that's the problem. But could gaming actually be part of the solution? What could it look like if gaming and movement weren't separate but integrated? We call it hybrid play, using the screen experiences to activate real world movement and emotion and exploration. Based on your experiences with gaming communities and Gen Alpha, do you think that there's an appetite for that? Do you think that that could be part of the future of play?
In the gaming environment, if you play harder, you're going to be rewarded in the real world with real gifts, for example. But I think there is a short time assets that you can play with the audience. There is no sustainable purpose. It's most of the time campaign activation. So I can't say that I've seen something which is really concrete and have a significant impact in the world of kids. So I can't say that I've seen it, to be honest. I've seen activation pure from brands, not to be, sustainable on someone's life.
Ah, okay. And what do you think about this idea then of, if we were to connect, we'll say the experience of, let's say we're playing, NFL on EA Sports or a sports game, if we were to connect that experience to a real world experience, real world movement, real world identity, but connect them in a way that you're talking about, that it doesn't create a massive gap. Do you think that could be a helpful way with Gen Alpha in shaping better identities in a more positive way?
Yeah, I think there is some criterias when you design a game that's always try to move forward the experience of the game overall. That doesn't exclude the players, right? So it's the publisher responsibility to make sure that the player is gonna be comfortable with the game. But also when it comes to kids, I think we should be aware of what type of games they are playing, because there is so many different genres of games in the world. It can be adventure, can be so many AA games as well. Well, you should be close to type of games that you allow your kids to play. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not possible with every type of games.
No, it's not. And you're absolutely right on that. I see how, parents are more accepting of their child playing games that are more educational or that are developing skills or that are more child friendly. And I know in the world of play and movement, games can be vilified a lot for they're spending too much time on video games. They're not playing in free play and sport and all of all of the things that we did perhaps more as childhood. And some of the conversations that we've had around that has been, well, can we actually merge two positively, And so, as you said, the publishers of the games, if they have games that are linked to real world play, we're building real world identity, we're building real world experiences, we're enhancing play. At Kuul Play, we've kind of talked about this as hybrid play, this idea of hybrid where we could merge the best of both worlds and give children like a virtual experience and a real world experience that are connected, and that, whether that's educational, but also in moving and playing. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that, having spent time in the gaming world.
Yes, because audience
Yes.
have evolved and sometimes they merge from other space, which can be untapped space. And what I think is that there are the right community because they create something strong by themselves. So there is different audiences that were created around the games at the end of the experience.
Okay. And so it's really, we're not just delivering content to kids in general, we're actually co-creating experience with them. So we must lean into their voice and understand the audience that we are creating for.
Yeah, definitely. And some games, most of the games in general, they have the age, if you can play or not, When it's under 18, there is some restriction because they designed the game for a specific audience with a specific maturity, which is not always respected by the player, right? But you don't know who's going to
Yeah.
play at the end of the day because the person who's going to buy
Yes.
the game, it's not fine. It's not necessarily the person who's going to play with it.
Right.
We believe that in the marketing, we need to be more sustainable aware of who's going to be the real player at the end of the day.
That makes a lot of sense. When we were building Kuul Play, it was really focused on kids between, we'll say, 4 and 10. And we've worked with thousands of kids, Gen Alphas, if you like, and understanding their experience. And these are kids maybe not in traditional sport, and a lot of them love gaming and being involved in social media, of course. And so when we were approaching Kuul Play, we have the Kuul Play world, which is a world for them. And they've actually helped co-create that. Along the way, we've iterated with them. And so they have a kind of a short virtual experience, and then they come off screens and doing a real world play. In that, one of our strengths is understanding what helps kids move, especially kids that aren't sporty. So we help build their confidence with moving and playing, so they feel like that they would as good as they would if they were playing in a video game. And so what the kids will say is, it feels like a video game. And then they're like, but it's not quite a video game, right? Because they're not completely on the screen and immersed in the real world. And we found that there is a desire for kids to be off screen, and they like the connection to and identifying with the gaming world, if you like. But Absolutely. Like you've said, we found that them being part of the creation process of our world and informing it has been a huge shift for us.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And they love to be part of the experience. They don't like to be left behind because the experience is
Right.
so immersive in general. Most of the publisher try to be immersive as possible. So kids wants to be part of the conversation. That's the new metrics, I would say, that we can have the whole experience part of the gameplay. Yeah.
I love that. And as someone who's worked with creators and brands, how do you think that shapes their relationship to their bodies and their confidence? We've talked a little bit about identity and how they move through the real world.
Yeah, that's a great question. I truly believe that social media, not only games app, social media shape the vision of your ideal body because you are influenced by content shared by people and you follow people that you admire. So you try to influence the way you think of who you really are. So it's a lot of balance between what you like, how level of confidence you have for yourself, but also what are the brand who try to influence you indirectly. So it's management in between these three environment, I would say.
Is there a space then for brands to maybe proactively take an approach, especially for Gen Alpha, in positively representing, kids to kids today, whether that's physicality or behaviors, and I'm thinking specifically maybe in the sports world, we have a lot of kids today and they don't move as well and as much as we did before. And so maybe if that was represented more by brands and creators, it would be in a positive way. It would help kids in terms of their own identity rather than feeling discouraged and then not moving and playing, because we're seeing a huge drop off in physical activity and participation in sport. And I know from being on the ground and in the trenches, there's so many kids who don't feel like that they have the confidence to move and play well. And I just wonder, is there a huge opportunity then, just on what you're saying, that we could help shape with this identity? And maybe what would you say to brands, creators, or industries that, may be able to influence that?
Yeah, I think there is a huge way for bridging this gap with confidence. So between having confidence and going to somewhere else, there is a gap, which is the access. Saying that allows me to think space creates for kids because brands, they don't have rights to target young kids at such a young age. You are not allowed to market something for kids. So the final customer, even if it's the kids, the person who's going to be the intermediate person between the kids and the brand, it's the parents. So you market for the parents that going to have the final cut and decision for their kids. So I would say you need to convince the parents with the product that you want to sell to kids. So there is some barriers as well for brands to be super efficient and super pro to be sure that they're gonna be owned by the parents, right? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but it's more about how you're gonna convince the parents who's gonna be the final decision maker for kids.
I see. I see. And so, if, for example, a brand, while they're not advertising towards the kids, it's actually the parents. Do you think then that there's an opportunity there that we can influence positively? Specifically, I'm talking more about like moving and playing in activities for kids.
Yeah, I think in the sports space, there is a lot of things because I know that Gen Alpha are really keen about what's gonna planet's future will look like, right? So I really encourage brands to embrace those topics to cover and to address the right message to kids.
Yeah, it's so important. Yeah, you're right. I see it. They're very more socially conscious. And I'm wondering then, we've talked a lot about gaming. In the gaming world, what do you think that brands don't fully understand about Gen Alpha?
The missing part, I would say, it's to frame the game, to make it more unique, because movement and play, it's already part of the gaming experience. If we are talking about gaming, there is a lot of things that can happen during the game experience. So I truly believe that there is still a space for that.
Amelia, if you could speak directly to a parent who feels a little lost maybe in this world of screens and gaming and wants their kid to have the freedom and the enjoyment and learn how to move and play and be part of the real world as well, and is concerned about too much scrolling and sitting, what would you say to them?
Yeah, well, don't be a stranger with social media app. I know I said it before, but go at your own pace. But make sure that you understand properly what your kids are saying. I don't say that you need to be an expert in these topics, but be sure that you really understand what are the cons and don'ts.
Okay, we'll wrap up really quickly with a rapid fire round. So I'll say maybe some statements and just one or two thoughts or words that come into mind to go, if you're good with that.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Okay. So maybe what's a myth about Gen Alpha that drives you crazy?
Young teens scrolling content and content without reading it, without really paying attention about what's happened and just scrolling until they found what they really want. That drives me crazy.
Yes. Gen Alpha, what do we need to know about this generation and how they engage with content, digital world, real world?
Well, they learn so fast, so quickly, but most of the time they just confuse themselves with the real world and the digital world.
Screens, a threat or an opportunity?
Wow. I would say screen is an opportunity.
A brand that you think really gets it when it comes to Gen Alpha and this space of culture and virtual real worlds?
Wow. I would say Lego, definitely Lego, because it's an incredible brand. From time to time, they literally understood how it should be a legacy brand from generation to generation. I can't imagine another brand would touch my heart and touch my son's heart at the same time. So I would say Lego, definitely.
One word to describe the future of play.
The future of play will be interactive, will be powerful, and hopefully the future of play will be educative.
I love that. Truth bombs everywhere. This is what makes these conversations so worth having. I think what you've really opened up here today is that we can't go backwards. Screens aren't going away, but we can shape the future. And we can do that by listening to the kids and the young people and co-create with them and build worlds that are both digital and real, that they actually want to be part of and that are educational. Amelia, thank you. Thank you. Your insight as a parent, but as someone who's really immersed and understands the world of marketing, but also across these different industries. For everyone listening, I hope it sparks something for you. And I invite everyone to connect with Amelia. We'll leave all your details on our episode show notes and to follow you. And yeah, we're really excited and thrilled to be able to have your insights and your contribution. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me here.